when they tell you, yeah.
Welcome. It is Wednesday at 4, so this is Baldy and The Blonde. And welcome to everyone in New Orleans and wherever you are. I'm Michele Godin here with Tom Kowitz every Wednesday at 4. You can check us out at baldyandtheblonde.com to listen to our old shows, and we're even working on putting up our archive of our shows from 2008 to 2012 because, unfortunately, they're so relevant today because we still have so much tyranny and so little time. Right, Tom?
Yeah, it seems like nothing ever gets better, even though we go on the air and blab about it. They're not listening to us well enough.
How's it coming but putting up the old shows, Tom? God, because he's got to do it. I don't know how.
It's a two-step process, and I'm in the middle of the first step, trying to find a place where we have enough capacity to put everything.
Okay.
There's a lot of material. We did, I don't know how many shows we did, but upwards of, a couple hundred or 300 or something.
Yeah, we were, we used to interview a lot of liberty sort of oriented guests like Andrew Napolitano, Rand Paul, Pat Buchanan. So I think it's worth putting it up there. And that was kind of, when there was no podcast. We should have stuck with it then. You know what I'm saying?
I know. We were on before there was podcast, and then we went off, and then there was podcast.
I know it. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about, like everybody else, Mr. Epstein. But, I am a lawyer, so I think I have maybe a little bit of a different perspective from time to time. And we're also going to talk about the floods in Texas. It so happens that my family barely escaped with their lives in what was called the Big Thompson River flood of Colorado in 1976. 144 people died. A pretty similar thing with a torrential rainstorm. And, for those of you that are in New Orleans, obviously we experience flooding, but it's not the same. And I kind of think a good way to think of it is in the hill countries, in canyons, it's sort of like a funnel where the water goes in, wide at the top, but then it all funnels down to the canyons and forms these giant walls of water. And it's just an incredible force of nature and takes everything and everybody out in its path. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the show, because it's interesting. And remind me, Tom, I haven't talked to you about this, but I see that all the local meteorologists posting about Texas saying, don't talk to me about cloud seeding, which is very odd and defensive and bizarre. I mean, I happened to go back and look at the old newspaper clippings that my dad had saved because there was no internet in the 70s, of course. But I just realized today one of the big articles was about cloud seeding in the area where the floods happened. And a guy named Dylan Federico on Facebook's flipping out if you talk to him about that. And I think maybe Shelby Latino as well. And you and I both know I have a copy of Scientific American from 1954, and the cover is about cloud seeding written by Kurt Vonnegut's brother, right?
Yeah, I know it well.
Yeah. So, anyway, how about that Epstein situation?
Well, I'd like to start with the clip number 11. I think it sums it up pretty well, based on what we've heard in the last 24 hours.
All right, Kobe, you got that? All right.
This is Mr. George Carlin.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. This is George Carlin, famous comedian. Hit it,
I have certain rules I live by. My first rule, I don't believe anything the government tells me. Nothing.
The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear.
Yep.
So I don't know if I could possibly add anything to that brilliance.
No, he was so ahead of his time, right? It's a Big Club is the one you usually hear people play, but I like this clip. This is great.
Yeah,
it starts out with, it's a big club and you're not in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
They start that with, I don't believe anything they say, and I don't either. Followed up with, they own all the media, they own all the politicians, judges, education, etc., and you're going to hear only what they want you to hear. And now that's where we're at.
I would actually just say that, and I'm sorry, it's hard, but Tom and I can't see each other because he's remote, so it's hard to judge when he's finished talking, so I don't mean to talk over you, Tom. Go ahead.
Well, I was just wanted to say that everybody by now has heard, Trump from that cabinet meeting yesterday, and we'll play that in a little bit and give our takes on it. But it's preposterous, his take on things.
Yes.
We shouldn't even be asking, let alone talking. We shouldn't be asking about Epstein at this point. I mean,
right.
Anyway,
how dare us express curiosity?
Exactly.
What?
So,
yeah, I thought it was a real misstep by Trump. And I mean, normally he can read the room. There's been a few times when he's been astoundingly just so off kilter, and this is definitely, in my view, the top. Even worse than his misunderstanding of the public sentiment regarding the forced vaccinations, which I realize he didn't force them, but still he embraced them as though they were something great. And that was strange. But this was bizarre. So misstep, big one.
We have two clips. The next one is going to be and I clip them separately.
Okay.
So we can focus first on the question and discuss that for a second, and then Trump's response. So they're clipped separately. So, Kobe, please play clip number 12.
Your memo
This is the
released
question.
yesterday, Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for an American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did?
Okay, so the question is specifically isolated to whether Epstein ever worked for an American or foreign intelligence agency.
Yeah, because
Nothing
that's the whole point.
That's separate and apart from his crimes, alleged suicide, any of that stuff, and those are both big too. But this question it's not like this question has been addressed forever.
No.
Right? It's a fairly new question, right?
I think so.
And so it totally is. And
Yeah.
listen to Trump's response. We shouldn't even be asking about it because Epstein's been in the news for so long. Kobe, let's hear 13.
Talking about Jeffrey Epstein, this guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration.
Well, he's just wrong 100%.
100%. Really, really weird, too. And he looks worse than it sounds. I don't know if you got to look at him when he's saying it.
Yeah, I did.
This is the first time I ever just listened to him. It doesn't sound as angry and snarky as he looked. I mean, if you read people who were there, they all snapped at the reporter. He snapped. He really, he looked crazy. I just don't understand for a man who is usually just so good at manipulating media. Even if he doesn't like your question, he never acts like that. That's just really
not like that. And
bizarre.
And you know what? So it was just like a day or two ago, he was talking about the stolen election of 2020.
Yeah.
Well, he's still talking about that.
Right.
And you know
we
what?
can't talk about Epstein. And listen,
the 2020 election is important, and we should talk about it. But we should talk about this too.
It's super relevant if, in fact, as many people have alleged, it's not about Epstein and his lurid, disgusting, child sex abuse, whatever he was doing. Mostly what we've heard is, sex trafficking young women to people of prominence, to film them, because he had cameras in every room of the house, to blackmail them, to do the bidding of whoever paid for the blackmail. And,
why are you asking about that? We've been talking about this for a long time, Michele.
You're right, Tom. Damn, I'm sorry. Let it go. Come on. Jeez.
And how dare you ask about the truth behind the JFK assassination. That's
Right.
over 60
Well,
years old.
I know, and you know, we have 50 seconds left, Tom.
All right.
I heard somebody saying, I thought this was a great take. Look at the difference between Tulsi Gabbard's handling of the JFK files and the way Trump and Bondi and, you know, the two like hostages, Bongino and Cash Patel handled the Jeffrey Epstein matter. She just released everything. And, you know, we don't need indexes. We don't need your help. Just release it. And that's what they should have done. But the way this was handled is bizarre. And I'm sorry to say, but I think it's a real problem, And we have communists in the waiting looking to find anything they can. But we'll get back on and go over more of this after the break. We are Baldy and the Blonde. You can follow us at Baldy Blonde on X. See you in a minute. Welcome back to Baldy and the Blonde. I'm Michele Godin here every Wednesday at 4. You can follow us at Baldy Blonde on X and listen to our shows at baldyandtheblonde.com, commercial free. And thanks for all the feedback. And I do wish that people would like and join the group and like our posts. But I don't know. It's like pulling teeth. So anyway, we were discussing the lovely topic, which apparently is so ancient that we're not allowed to ask questions about it anymore, about Epstein and his sex trafficking and, you know, political blackmail, etc., which is no longer a thing. You just imagined that there was a Jeffrey Epstein, and you imagined that Pam Bondi said that she had the list on her desk, that she was reviewing it, and that, I don't know, there were thousands of was it hours of video or our videos? I don't remember, but Tommy, there?
Well, she said something about tens of thousands of hours,
yeah.
Something like that. But now she's backtracked and said, well, no, what the videos depict are Epstein watching kiddie porn.
Well, which is
ridiculous. I mean, it's like there's all of a sudden there's just all that other stuff is just gone. Now, in her defense, and I have watched her interview when she was on Fox a little while ago when she said that it was on her desk. What she said was, and she really did say, the file is on her desk, just like she said the MLK and JFK files. She was talking specifically about the file. Now, it's quite possible that there is no list per se, like he didn't actually have
Right.
this compiled on a spreadsheet.
Right,
So
exactly.
Technically, they're right. But that doesn't mean they don't have names. Come on.
Well, of course, and just to be really specific, the question she was asked was, quote, the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? End of question. Bondi's answer, it's sitting right now on my desk to review. That's a
Well, and that's true. But if you look at it in a larger context, I think you'll see that she's talking about.
Yeah. Either way, it doesn't matter. She hasn't released the file.
Exactly.
We're not just looking for a list. We were looking for the file. What happened?
Yeah.
We are the public who pays these people, and I'm sick of our government hiding everything from us. It's just ridiculous.
Okay.
And, you know, this is supposed to be transparency and also accountability that the vast majority of people who put Trump in office voted for that. And, you know.
Okay, that's the perfect segue to the next clip that we have. It's Alina. How does she say her last name?
Alina Habba. I want to say we've talked about her before on the show. She is an excellent lawyer. She is the one who is shutting down the crushing police consent decrees, which New Orleans labors under. Thank you, Mitch Landrieu. And so usually I think she's great. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, and she was pretty great in this.
Yeah,
sound
she's
clip.
fantastic.
This was back in February on Pierce Morgan has a show called Uncensored.
Yes, it's good.
And she was being interviewed on that show, and she's talking specifically about. He asked her specifically about the Epstein case and file, and whether there's going to be names and arrests, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So, Kobe, that's clip number 14.
Case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway, we don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Cash and Pam, there will be accountability.
Do you think by releasing information from these files, we are likely to see criminal actions being taken?
Absolutely.
Really?
I think it would be negligent for us not to hide lists, to protect political friends, all of that. We don't have time for that.
Wow, hide lists, protect political friends. She wasn't playing around.
No, she's so awesome. She's by the way, she is the director of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Go ahead.
Well, we should point out she's been a counselor to Donald Trump for several years.
Yes.
Right. And so it's not like she's flying blind here.
No.
She's seen things, heard things. She has some kind of knowledge. And she said straight up that we have names that will come out. She says so many individuals.
It's shocking. It's shocking. How could it not be?
How could it not be? And we shouldn't have hidden lists, which is exactly what we now have.
Yeah.
To protect political friends. That was catastrophic, that interview. And of course, it's resurfacing now. And then they release a memo saying that there's no client list. And then there's Trump immediately saying, well, why are you asking about it? Well, they had a memo saying that there's no list, and I'm not supposed to ask you about it.
It's just, what do you, I mean, I've, tried to listen to different people's viewpoints of what is this all about? And I've heard somebody say, it's just so awful, and it would bring down so many governments around the world, because higher-ups in governments around the world are, engaged in sex trafficking and being blackmailed. Well, you know what? Bring them down. Good.
Yeah, well,
bye.
You know what? If the only thing that came out was no names and nothing like that, if the only thing that came out was, yes, he was working for a foreign and or U.S. intelligence agency, that's all it would take to be catastrophic for this administration.
Sure. I
Right?
mean, well, it wouldn't have. You mean catastrophic because of the last few days where they suddenly decided they weren't releasing it?
Well, I guess
because otherwise it's not their fault. I mean,
no, but it would just blow the whole. Well, because they're shown to be lying and covering up and all that. If it comes and all previous administrations that Epstein was working under, but this one because he's in power now, he's saying that there's no list. There's nothing. I can't even believe you're asking me questions. If all that came out was that yes, he was working for the U.S. or Israel or whoever else, or a multiple of places that were paying him for this information, that alone would be horrific.
Yeah, now it would, because of this last few days of just insane mishandling. I mean, just insane. I don't know what, I mean, let's just say you wanted to dig your way out of this. What are you going to do? Fire Bondi and say she lied?
You're right.
I mean, she's going to be hung out to dry. The whole thing. And back in the day, a few months ago, when Bongino and Patel were beginning this salvo, they looked so bizarre on Maria Bartiromo's show.
It totally looked like a hostage.
Got 1 minute left, Tom. Yeah, they look like hostages. I know everybody says it, but it's really funny.
The only thing that I would want to bring up in this last minute, we have another soundbite, not related to Epstein, but related to, remember that famous Franklin sex trafficking scandal in Nebraska? It sounded totally crazy to me. Everybody, and still they deny it. They say it's a big hoax, but I would like to play a clip about that. Because it resonates still today, even though they're calling it a hoax. I don't believe it was a hoax.
Yeah. Well, we have 20 seconds left. So this is Baldy and the Blonde. We're here every Wednesday at 4. You can check out our shows anytime at baldyandthblonde.com without commercial interruption. And you can follow us on X at Baldy Blonde. Welcome back to Baldy and the Blonde. I'm Michele Godin here with Tom Coates every Wednesday at 4. Follow us at Baldy Blonde on X, and baldyandtheblonde.com has all of our old shows. So we were discussing the insane developments with the Trump administration now telling us there is no list. even though they said there was a list. And by the way, I didn't say this in the last segment, but J.D. Vance said there was a list that should be released as well as many others. And now we not only are not getting anything, but apparently President Trump finds it offensive for us to even ask anything about it. So, Tom, you have something from the 80s that you think is instructive on what Mr. Epstein might have been up to.
Yeah, I think so. This was a really famous case. A lot of our listeners are going to be too young to remember, but this was from the late 80s. I think the story broke in 1988 in Lincoln, Nebraska, or Omaha, Nebraska, I forget. But it involves many people came forward and said that they were victims of sex trafficking. Some were foster children, and they said that they were victims of a sex trafficking ring. It involved prominent political figures and big business people in Nebraska and high-level U.S. politicians. And they even mentioned things like satanic practices, ritualistic abuse. And it sounded so insane at the time. I was in my late 20s at the time.
Right.
And to me, it sounded nuts. And but now, fast forward in time, and now I'm practically an old man, and this stuff doesn't sound nuts
Right.
at all. And I got a clip from a guy who's helping investigate this, and he's written a book on it. His name is John DeCamp. He passed away a few years ago, but he was in the Nebraska State Senate for many years, and then he did an investigation. There was another investigator, I forgot his name, but he died along with his 8-year-old son when mysteriously his small plane just literally disintegrated in midair. Fancy that. Small planes do that all the time.
Sure.
So this next sound clip is from a documentary that's called Conspiracy of Silence. And what's interesting about this, it was scheduled to air on the Discovery Channel on May 3rd of 1994, but it got pulled at the last minute. It even appeared to be on the schedule in like TV Guide and that sort of thing. So it was publicized to air, and with a few days to go, it got pulled, and it has never to this day been aired except online, like on YouTube and stuff, but never on TV, cable, or network TV. So anyway, so Kobe, that is clip number 15, if we can play that.
Web of intrigue that starts in our Holy of Holies, Boys Town, Nebraska, one of the most respected institutions in the United States, and spreads out like a spider web to Washington, D.C., right up to the steps of the nation's capital, the steps of the White House, involves some of the most respected and powerful and richest businessmen in this United States of America. And the centerpiece of the entire web is the use of children for sex and drug dealing and drug couriers, the compromising of politicians, the compromising of businessmen, but worst of all, the corruption of key institutions of government.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Sounds exactly like the Epstein thing.
Yeah, it's the whole point is that, it's the use of sex trafficking to influence government. And, of course, I'm sure that's been going on since thousands of years, right? And
and
it's just too weird to have the government so blatantly lie to us in this case. I mean, for her to come up now, for Bondi to suddenly say, oh, well, sorry, no, there's no videos of Epstein himself. It's just child porn videos that he downloaded. That is just not what he was charged with, not with Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting in jail for sex trafficking. It's disgusting, and I'm telling you, I think it's a huge problem with the base of the right.
The reason I wanted to play that clip, from that Franklin case in the 80s was, now it was never proven, but it's just been swept away as a hoax. I would just say that that's an awfully elaborate hoax, and it just happens to be exactly what Epstein was accused of.
Exactly.
So I guess what I'm saying is just question your history, and when they tell you that a thing's a hoax, just believe the opposite, because you're probably going to be right.
Right, exactly.
The opposite of what you're told.
I mean, and wouldn't you like to see them, like, okay, if we're not going to get into Epstein, what about we have been told repeatedly that there's evidence that 300,000 children are missing from Biden's invitation to invade our country. And maybe they could turn their attention to accountability on that issue and save some kids from sex trafficking. I mean, I don't know. I'm disgusted totally with the lack of accountability. We're not seeing anything happen. Yeah, I know. I was just thinking about that. The movie
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of
And
Freedom.
what's so interesting about that, the movie, I thought was very good. I really liked that movie, and it was based on true events. But separate and apart from the movie, what was really interesting was the left's reaction to it. Their reaction was, "That's fake news. It's not a thing."
How could they say
That was
that?
shocking.
That's so weird.
I don't know.
That is really weird.
Because it was conservatives who put it out, I guess, and that's all it takes.
I mean, let's look at our side for just, you know what? I know we weren't planning on talking about this, but there's an obvious difference between how the right and the left, for lack of a better term, react to our side doing something that we don't approve of. There is an uproar on the right because of this Epstein bait and switch, fast play, whatever you want to call this. And the left, they would just march lockstep. Just like you said, because there's 300,000 children missing, and it happened because Biden opened the borders, therefore it can't be true. We can't look into it,
exactly.
and you must be a fool to even bring it up. But we're not like that. There's huge problems on the right now because of what we now see as a mounting lack of accountability. Now, I want to say that I'm really, really happy with the closing of the border. That was a great thing that's been done. That was a campaign promise kept. But unlike the left, we hold people's feet to the fire.
Yeah, now on that one, I got to say, and I agree, props to Trump for closing the border, but frankly, that was a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
It wasn't controversial, and he could deal with it just making a few orders. But he did it.
Well, I mean, it is a little, before you move on, though, it was a little bit, it was controversial in whether or not it could be done, because the propaganda before Trump won was, well, y'all, we could close the border. We just needed to pass that bipartisan bill, which that idiot Langford, because we always have idiots on our side, had, let himself be, led around by the nose to be a co-author so they could say it was bipartisan. And it only let 5,000 people in a day unless we needed to let more in. So
I know, but it's just not true that it required another bill. And
well, that's
Trump
what I'm saying. Trump just said, "Yeah, we don't need it. We don't need anything. We're just going to follow the law and close the border," and we did. And that, kudos to him for that.
Yeah,
So,
but then now step it up and get to something that's a little more difficult, like tell the truth about Epstein. And
right, run and hide.
Not only are they lying, he's telling us straight up. It's a desecration that you're even asking.
Right.
I mean, that's pathetic.
That is pathetic. Pathetic. And, but I don't know what they're going to do. I think they're going to throw Baldy under the bus and blame it on her, because he's going to look at some polls and it's going to show he's got a problem with the base because of this. And I don't know what they're going to do, but I would imagine, I don't know. We'll see. We'll be here to cover it.
I'll tell you what I think.
What'd you think?
It's obviously so massively important that this remains covered up that it will remain covered up.
Yeah. Seems that way.
Yeah. It's huge to somebody or a lot of somebody's very powerful that this stays way more powerful than Trump. That this stays covered up. Yeah.
Yeah, you said that the other day. He's not the boss on this issue. Somebody else is telling him what to do.
Yeah.
And who knows what threats he's received, right? It's not that he's in the files. That's so ridiculous, because Biden and Merrick Garland, they would have released that immediately if they had that on Trump.
Okay.
So.
I've heard that argument, but I don't entirely buy that. I think it's more nuanced than that, because to somebody or a body of people, it's far more important that it stays covered up than Trump become president. In other words, this needs to stay covered up at all costs, including maybe Trump's got to serve. because they still obviously are controlling him in this matter. So that's my take on it. It's worth it to them to have Trump be president.
No. I couldn't disagree more. There would be a way to slice that out of the. You don't have to reveal everything to get him on that, and they would have used that in a flash. You'd have had leaks right and left to Applebaum at the New York Times, to their new favorite leakage, Axios. It would have been everywhere.
I know I could easily make that argument, but I'm just not buying that it's that cut and dry.
Yeah, I am.
Because
I think it's. I actually think it has to do with something with Israel, but because of Netanyahu's eyeball timing, he arrives immediately upon the suppression of the Epstein. We have 1 minute, Tom, and presents Trump with a nomination for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, let's nominate a guy who interrupted negotiations with bombing.
Well, I don't think he did. I mean, we have 40 seconds. I'll just say real quick. I think Israel did the bombing on their own, and Trump, being the prideful, egotistical man that he is, could not say that they went behind his back and did that.
We dropped a giant bunker buster bomb.
That came after the bomb. I'm talking chronologically.
I understand that.
And they killed the negotiators who he was supposed to meet with a few days later. So I mean, Trump's, they know who they're dealing with.
Guy. He's not a peaceful guy.
Okay, so it is 10 minutes, 10 seconds till break. This is Baldy and the Blonde here every Wednesday at 4. You can check us out on baldyandtheblonde.com anytime. Welcome back to Baldy and the Blonde. I'm Michele Godin. We are here every Wednesday at 4, and you can check us out at baldyandtheblonde.com. Tom, I was just able to reach my sister Suzanne, who is willing to come on and talk about the Colorado 1976 flood, which is very, very similar to the Texas flood, except that in Colorado you have a whole lot more mountains, which is really, really important to escape from this kind of treachery. So, Tom?
I'm here.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if you're done. Again, it's hard because Michele and I can't see each other. I'm remote on the phone.
Yeah, so
hey, Suzanne.
She's not there yet. I'm about to text her the number to call in.
Oh, gotcha.
So if you want to just say, maybe we can do our the budget stuff.
That,
go ahead. Let me just text it to her.
No, while you're doing that, I want to read some things that have been posted on X.
Oh my God, yes.
And I'm just going to paraphrase because they're disgusting. But this is talk about the difference between how the left and right, to use loose terms, react to things. This is so horrific. It's across the board. It seems there's so many people posting things like Texas deserved it.
Oh my God!
Texas deserves the flooding. Cry harder. Texas deserves it. There's people saying, "I'm glad it happened. Good." And there's a ton of that. But you know what? Just yesterday, and I don't know how much news this made. So I'm in New Mexico for the summer.
Right.
And so I think it made some national news. There was similar flash flooding in a small town called Ruidoso, New Mexico.
It did make national news.
Okay. So at least 3 people killed, including 2 children. Well, New Mexico is obviously a heavily blue Democrat state. So would these guys who are posting these disgusting messages say the same about those children?
No. I guess if you're come from a blue state, then we feel sorry for you if you die as a child.
And maybe
it's just unbelievable. Watch out. Just 1 second, Nick. She's going to call in. Go ahead and put her through. She should call any minute now. Go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
Maybe a large portion of the poor victims in Texas voted Democrat. And so what if they did? But it's nothing to do with this.
It's so horrific that you can't even believe it.
These people they're demented if that's what you're thinking. There's such sad stories about there was like 8-year-old twins sisters who were lost in that. There's 11 and 13-year-old sisters who were found holding each other's hands 15 miles down river, and these people are happy about that. Their minds, their souls are demented. They look like humans and they walk among us like humans, but they sure don't seem human. If you can express that kind of sentiment.
That's a great, scary way to put it, right? It's like you're sitting next to somebody on a plane who is so demonic that they are reveling and cheering on death to children in a flood because the state voted for Donald Trump. I mean,
Yeah.
that is just
Right.
demonic. So, when this has been going on, I couldn't help but think about a flood that happened in Colorado in 1976 in the summer, and it so happened that my sister Denise and I were not with the rest of the family because we had to work, and but everyone else went on the family trip along with my parents, my sister Suzanne and Denise, and my brother Billy, and my aunts and uncles and cousins. And they were in Loveland, Colorado, and basically downriver from the Estes Park. And anyway, I'm happy to welcome my sister Suzanne Godam Worth on the phone. Hello, Suzanne.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So
Suzanne.
usually I usually can't get him to talk about any of this, but Suzanne graciously agreed to come on and lend some personal insight because we have all these people judging, the Texas people. They didn't react properly. They should have had more warning. And I know from hearing the story from my family for years, it ain't like that. So, Suzanne, if you would just tell as much as you're comfortable talking about, like that day, was it obvious that you all were going to be facing a life-threatening flood?
No. That day we were tubing down this little creek that was about calf high, and it had been raining in the afternoon, but not real hard. Then later that evening, we were all in the rooms. My mom and dad were next door barbecuing on the deck, and all of a sudden, the water was getting higher and higher. And again, we didn't think anything.
So these are like cabins on the river? Kind of like cabins on the river, like these little girls, I guess. Yeah.
Correct, on the river. And, we were in the other room, and just hanging out, and all of a sudden somebody was banging on our door and said, "You'll have to get out. The dam's going to break. The water's going to come rushing. It's a flash flood." And we were like, "Wait, what?"
Right.
So we threw on our shoes, and that's basically all, and ran out the door, and he said, "Get in your car." So we all got in the car, and then he banged on our doors, said, "Get out of the car. This isn't going to work. You got to climb the mountain across the street."
And how
my sister,
I'm going to stop for 1 second and ask you just the mountain. Was that like a little monkey hill or what?
Oh, no, it was a mountain.
Yeah. And y'all had tried to climb it. Y'all had tried to climb it that day?
Correct, with ropes, and we couldn't do it.
Right.
And so we, this all happened within a matter of minutes. I couldn't really tell you exactly, but it was extremely quick.
So y'all were getting in the car, and he told y'all get out the car, and then what happened?
Said, "You need to climb that mountain across the street." We had to go through a ditch, and as soon as we got out of the car, it was already coming up past our ankles already and getting higher, and it's rushing. It's not just rising, it's rushing. So we got across the ditch, which was probably waist high, and started climbing up the side of the mountain, and the water was just coming up as quick as we could run up the hill, which was not easy. You were pulling yourself up by the cactus or whatever was in front of you, and we went up as high as we could go, and within, I couldn't tell you, but it was really quick. Within no time, not only was the water moving all the cars, they were gone, and then there were cars coming by with people who didn't get out of the cars, and then the owners of the hotel and their 6 kids were on the roof of the hotel, which eventually was also gone.
Yeah.
Along with all of those people, and the 2 men that came down from their home to save us, one perished and one jumped to a tree, and that's the only tree that stood, and he was in that tree all night.
And y'all were calling back and forth to him. I remember Dad saying that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but you couldn't hear.
No.
Because rocks the size of, bigger
houses.
than cars were coming down and banging everything around, and it was just super loud and very, very, very quick. There was nothing you could have done. If those men wouldn't have come and knocked on the door, we would have all but died.
I know it. And I'm, forever grateful. And Suzanne, I thank you for coming on. We have 49 seconds left. So, and it turned out that 144 people died, and I don't recall there being any kind of nasty sniping after that. Everybody was very kind and supportive, in contrast to the crazy divide in our country now that people are actually angry at children and laughing at them for dying because they live in a red state. So God help us. But
absolutely sad.
yeah. And so thanks so much, Suzanne.
They're just children. God's children.
Yes.
End of story.
All right. Well, we're going off. This is Baldy and the Blonde. We'll be back. You can listen to the show anytime on baldyandtheblonde.com. And God bless America. And thank you, Suzanne, for getting up that mountain. See you next week on Baldy and the Blonde.